Good morning. And thank you all for being here, whether you're here online or here in person. I'm just thrilled that you're here. And I just want to start by saying, well, first of all, happy Independence Day. Um, and as always, I love declaring my independence from, you know, the old ways of thinking and stuff like that. And we're going to be talking about that in a little bit. But right now, I just want you to know that what a pleasure it is to have you all here today, and to remind anybody who might come on who doesn't know where they are. I am the Reverend Dr. Candice Becket. I'm the GAP minister here at Centers for Spiritual Living in Ukiah, California. And it's my pleasure to greet all of you and welcome you here today. For it is with my very open heart, I am so thrilled and so delighted that you are here and that we're here to share this time together. Okay, so I know that somewhere in this service today, whether it's in the treatment, in the music, in the message, that you are going to receive the good that you are seeking right here and right now. So just sit back and enjoy yourself. And we're going to, oh, I'm still getting used to the two screens, so sorry. We're going to start with an opening treatment, and that's going to be given by Victoria Wright. So Victoria, come on up.
And a good morning to us all. Oh, stretch a little, stretch the arms out, and close your eyes if you're comfortable with that. You all look so good. And let's all take a deep breath together. And know that this wonderful day of celebration, of independence, of fireworks and picnics and community, that we are all here in the light and the love of the oneness of God. That it is what upholds us, speaks through us, sees the world through us, and loves through us. And right now and right here, we cherish that oneness with the universal being. We recognize it, we accept it wholly, and we share it with each other. Another deep breath. Let us all be willing to celebrate life right now together and throughout our lives, throughout this day, throughout this moment with the world around us. We are all God's children, and we celebrate that with big smiles and warm heart and gladness. And as we know this to be so, we let it go and let God. And so it is.
It is. So that's the metaphorical fireworks here in Mendocino County. Actually, it's the whole state of California. We're going with that. Okay. Hold on. I'm to introduce our soloist, but you know, I have to do this. And I am going to leave this open, Mary, for because that's the chat, and people are going to want to tell Calvin how fabulous he is. So hopefully that'll work. Wait a minute. There he is.
Can you hear me?
Okay, Calvin, take it away.
Hey. You are sacred love love is all that you are. You are sacred love, sacred love. God is all that you are. Show the way, God, show the way. I want to live in such a state of grace. Lead the way, God, lead the way. I want to live in such a holy place. Such a holy place. You are deepest joy, deepest joy is all that you are. You are deepest joy, God, deepest joy is all that you are. Show the way, God, show the way. I want to live in such a state of grace. Lead the way, God, lead the way. I want to live in such a holy place. Such a holy place. You are sacred love, sacred love. God is all that you are. You are sacred love, sacred love is all that you are.
Well, that was pretty wonderful. Okay, Mary. Mary told me I could do this. It's just the wrong hand. What's happening?
Just drift the cursor up to the top.
I did.
Scoop it up.
What?
Scoop it up.
Sweep it up. Ah. I can't get the cursor to show itself. There it is. Oh, there it goes. Say, oh, that worked just seamlessly. Okay, one more thing. Oh, wait, wrong way. This way, come on. Ah. Wow, it's exhausting. It'll be great. I mean, pretty soon we'll have our regular camera and we'll have our ways to change back and forth between these screens really seamlessly. But right now, that's just where we are. So, so again, welcome and thank you all for being here to be a part of our service today and watch me fumble around. Sometimes the cursor gets over there and then I can't find it. It's all learning curve for me, right? There we go. I think we have everything back where I want it. Okay, so again, thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Calvin. Started my day off really nicely. And I think a lot of this, what's going on with me right now is this little bit of hesitation because, you know, I started this week thinking I knew exactly what I wanted to talk about on this Sunday, which is Independence Day for us in the United States. And it just seemed like that's what I should talk about. And I sort of am still going to talk about that. But I think what's going on is, you know, what I was going to say and what I really need to say aren't the same, or at least not exactly the same. So this happened to me this morning as I was going over my notes, and I kind of really changed pretty much everything. So here goes, and we'll see where we go. All right, so I will tell you this. My topic is Journey to Personal Freedom. And I want to start with a quote that is biblical. This is from the book of John 8:32. And this is Jesus speaking. And he says, you will know the truth and the truth will set you free. Right? Do we know the truth? Sometimes. We'll get to that in a minute. Well, back in February, which I will tell you, that was Black History Month. I heard these two stories and I'll fess up. It was David Bruner. Who's like my hero right now. And these stories just came back to me in the last couple of days. And I was like, I need to tell these stories. So the first story is about a woman, Osceola McCarty. And Osceola was born she's African-American, and she was born in 1908. And it was a very, very, the biography that I read, because I went back and read a lot of stuff about her yesterday. And it was a pretty challenging, in fact, they call it a raw start, because she was conceived when her mother was raped walking a wooded path in rural Mississippi, returning from caring for a relative. And Osceola was the product of that encounter in the woods. Now, again, this is 1908, it's rural Mississippi. So she's raised in a little town, or outside a little town, Hattiesburg, by her mother, her grandmother, and an aunt. And these women, what they did to survive was they cleaned houses, they cooked for other people, and they took in laundry. And even as a very small child, Osceola was given tasks to do. And so she would come home from elementary school and she would iron clothes, and she would, and one of the stories that David told, which I couldn't find this, but I liked it so well, I'm going to tell it to you anyway, was that she'd gone to school one day and she's in like, the third grade or something. And the teacher asks her who ironed her dress. And she said, well, I did. And she goes, well, you did a beautiful job. Would you iron something, would you iron some clothes for me? And she said, yes. So she took the clothes home and ironed them for her teacher and took them back, and her teacher paid her. And then when she took her money, she was like ready to just contribute it to the household. And the women, the other three women in the household said, no, you earn that money, you keep it. And so this is verified. What she did with the money that she earned was she had, and you'll recognize this because I still have it. It's in terrible shape, but it's a little baby buggy that you put your doll in. She had one of those, which I think probably looked about the way ours looks now. I actually thought about bringing it in. I was like, yeah, no, too much, too much for that. But she had, a little cushion, and had a little pink satin pillow in it. And she started stashing her money in this baby carriage. So anyway, like I said, she started, and I guess the work that she did, like with the household, they gave her, but we're talking like a nickel, for the dress she ironed for this woman. And so just pennies, nickels, dimes were coming her way, and she's stashing them. And the other thing, just a little, not really a side note, but these women are completely relying on each other. They are dependent on each other. This is how they survive. And at one point, the aunt becomes seriously ill and has to be hospitalized. And when she comes back, she can't walk. And so it becomes Osceola's job to take care of her ailing aunt, and she has to pick up all of the work that the aunt was doing. But now she's like 11 or 12 by now. At least that's how I was reading the stories. That's where I think she was. And so basically she dropped out of school and she never went back. So, and I also, the way they did this, they had like this, huge pot, cauldron, something. And every day they had to take it outside and they put it on, fire, and they had to, get water and fill it. And they brought that water to a boil, and the description was like really that worked. And so I mean, they would get the clothes wet, and she would scrub them. She talks about using the little, washer board thing to scrub things. And, but the last thing they did was they threw them in this boiling water and stirred them, and they were just like pristine clean. And I was like, wow. But just the whole idea of the fire, and they're doing this every day, any day in rural Mississippi. So you know how hot and humid it is. Like, so they're doing this every day pretty much. And so that's how, how she's living and how she's growing up. But at one point later in her life, she was asked, how did that make you feel? What did you think about having to do that? And, what you would normally be asked. And so this is an actual quote. She says, I knew there were people who didn't have to work as hard as I did, but it didn't make me feel sad. I loved to work. And when you love to do anything, those things don't bother you. Do you remember that baby buggy and the money she's stashing? So, and again, this looks like it is legit. She's like walking through town one day and she kind of gets this download from God or heaven or, divine intelligence, whatever you want to call that. And she knows that she's accumulating. She's not spending any of this money. It's all just in the baby carriage. So she gets the idea to take an action. And the action is she goes to a bank and she goes in and deposits it. And in her words, she says, I went to the bank and deposited. Didn't know how to do it. Went there by myself. Didn't tell mama and them I was going. So she just did it. And then she says, I commenced to save money. I never would take any of it out. I just put it in. So of course, that requires, at least if it were me or any of my children or any of my grandchildren, that takes a huge amount of self-control, to make that, this is how I'm going to do it. And the other thing that they said was that she needed to have modest appetites, which she did. She just wanted to do her work and was happy in it. And so how did she do it? And so here's another quote from Osceola. And she says, my secret was contentment. I was happy with what I had. And I kind of, when I was looking at that again, yesterday, I got this kind of a rush. Am I content with what I have? And I kind of like, in comparison, I should be really content with what I have. And I'm not saying if some divine urges you to go and open a bank account and start saving up, that you should do it. Or if the divine urge says maybe it's time to do this, that you don't respond, you take that action. But I loved it. I was content. I was happy with what I had. So her decision of, oh shoot, I lost my cursor again. Oh, there it is. Her decision was that whatever she made, 10% went to her church. And this is like when she's 11, 12 years old. 10%, so, she got a dime, a penny went to the church. A penny went, or an amount went to her living expenses, what she felt she needed to do to contribute to the family, and everything else went to the bank. So in one version, says that at that point, at some point, as she's continuing to make deposits into the bank, that the bank manager encouraged her to put her money into CDs or something like that, because there would be a greater return. She liked that idea, so she did that. And over the years, there was more than one account, and there was actually even a couple of banks involved. But all of her accounts continued to grow. all of her balances continued to go up. And at some point, as she's into her adult years, there's a bank manager who encourages her to open a trust. And because, she's getting older. So fast forward, it's 1994, so she's 68. She has really severe arthritis. She really cannot continue to work. So she retires. So she goes and talks to the banks and everything. And what they discover is all of her accumulated wealth in those 80-ish years is $280,000. If you look at how much that equates to our time, it's a huge amount of money. So part of what she did, her instructions for the trust was that this would be for this is on her death, that the money will be distributed to an estate. And the way it's described in more than one place is they put out, sometimes it's dimes, sometimes it's little pieces of paper, but the story I like is there's 10 dimes and they go, so this is a tenth of, each dime is a tenth. So $28,000 basically. And so she says what she wants upon her death, that a tenth of it goes to her church. And then she has 3 relatives, which I think are cousins, and that goes there. And then she's got 60% left. And what she chooses to do is she's going, that all the rest, which is going to be somewhere around $150,000, $160,000. And I think at some point they named it 150,000. It's going to go to Southern Mississippi University. Now, what I kind of, she stipulated that those funds should be used for students, preferably African-American descent, but anyone who could not otherwise attend because of financial hardship. And, so she was living off kind of interest off of that until her death. And that is what happened. But what I thought was interesting is the second that it came to light that she was doing this. And this is a school that's only been integrated since 1965. So it's like not even 30 years. And so it's been admitting Black students, but not a lot. And so now she's got this plan. And the second the news of her plan goes public, there's a whole bunch of local leaders who immediately fund an endowment that will be in her honor. So that money is continuing to help students go to school. So I just think here's this amazing woman who created a free and happy life on her own terms. But that's a really good lesson to us on our Independence Day, on our day. So let's look at that. But the other story that David related that I think also really speaks to being willing to stand up in the face of huge adversity is Jesse Owens. Now, most of you probably know who Jesse Owens is because he's pretty famous, but he was born James Cleveland Owens on your birthday only in 1913, September 12th, 1913. And it's in Alabama. So again, Mississippi, Alabama, this is not a really inviting place for young thinkers. And Jesse Owens, he's the son of a sharecropper. He's the grandson of slaves. And as a child, he was considered frail. He was very sick. He battled with chronic bronchitis and pneumonia, but still he was expected to work. So even at a very young age, I think it said 7 or 8, he was picking up to 100 pounds of cotton every day to help his family have food on the table. And he's like, the youngest of 10. But what happens is, we're going to fast forward, because what happens is it ends up, he's a really good athlete, and he runs really well. So we're going to fast forward to 1935, when he breaks 3 world records at the Big Ten championship games. And so now suddenly people see him, including the Olympic Committee, the United States Olympic Committee. So in 1936, he's on the track and field team, and off he goes to Berlin, 1936. So yes, this is Hitler's Nazi Germany. And we've seen, Hitler really laid into the United States by allowing, because there were actually 6. Well, I know there were 6 Black men on track and field. I don't know if there was any other, I know that. And they all did really well, but nobody did as well as Jesse Owens. Jesse Owens came away with 4 gold medals, which kind of blows a big hole in the supremacy of the Aryan race and that ideology, but there it was. And, and as highly praised as he was in Europe, and the news did reach the United States, it did do that. But when he came home, these are still Jim Crow years. So, separate but equal. And so even if you're an African-American, even an elite athlete, you're not going to be treated the same. There was no parade, there was no fanfare. A lot of the champions went to the White House to meet President Roosevelt. Jesse Owens was not invited. And so he never got that congratulations that was typical, which was ordinary. And yet, I think he kind of knew that, and he never really said anything negative, which I think right there is pretty amazing. But what did happen for him is that he was recognized, but not till 1976. And it was President Gerald Ford, awarded him the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which is the highest citizens award you can get in the United States. So I thought, well, that's good. I'm glad that happened. So now here's what I was thinking is, now I have heard, you've heard that, part of what we think in the science of mind is that change your thinking, change your life kind of thing. But what I know about that as I mature in my own spirituality is that I really get it, that I may not be able to have a choice concerning my conditions. You don't have, so certain conditions in your life you didn't necessarily choose, but we always are in a place of choice on how to respond to those conditions. So I look at Osceola and I look at Josie Owens and look at how they responded to their conditions. And to me, that marks some real freedom of choice, freedom of thinking. And so if these 2 African Americans at early part of the 20th century can see beyond their circumstances, beyond their situation, and have a greater response, what's stopping us? And what is my freest, most loving response that I can have? And one of the things that I started to think of is that the mind of God is everywhere. And whatever mind was in Osceola, whatever mind was in Jesse Owens, whatever they were using, I want that. And here's the good news. That mind is within me, and it is within all of you. So how are we responding? And it's really time to take a good look at that. And I know just this morning, I was having a talk with my grandson, and it was not a subject that either of us particularly liked, and we were in agreement, but I heard this is my response to this. And I was like, Jesse, we really need to think, is this how we really want to be in this moment? And we did agree, we're not sure where we are supposed to stand or what we are supposed to think, but we know that that's not the place. That is not serving us or anyone. So I came across a quote, and this is by a minister who I think is, I know she still has some kind of online presence, but she used to be the minister in Burbank. Her name is Marlene Morris. And this is what she has to say about that wonderful biblical quote. She says, "The truth will set you free, but first it might make you miserable." Oh, well, so that is the truth. And so here it is, because the truth is we are in control. We do get to choose our next thoughts. And yet when stuff is happening around us that we are totally in control of changing our thinking about it, to do something, have an action, say it differently, all of those things, and we don't, and we really like blaming somebody else. Oh, they're so terrible. Blah, 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 blah. Let's gripe about that. That was kind of what Jesse and I were griping about someone else today. And I went, you know, the truth, what is the truth? And I can tell you what it is not. This I'm sure of. If someone comes to you and says, let me tell you the truth, you're probably not going to hear anything other than their opinion, you know, their point of view. But the truth with a capital T is not an opinion, and it is not a point of view. The science of mind teaches that there is a power in the universe that is greater than you, and you can use it. That's the truth. That there is this thing that we influence with our thinking, with our attitude, with our belief. And so I really think that it's time that we start to embrace who we truly are. And it's because that idea of there is a power in the universe and you can use it, that is probably closer to a capital T truth than, you know, most of the other things we think are true. But the deal is that we're using that power all the time. And it's like, I have a very good friend who was arrested a couple of weeks ago for doing something that we weren't really, why would they do that? And you know, it was weird. But during that conversation, because he's also a New Thought, he goes, well, I definitely learned a lot from the experience. He's no longer arrested. Everything is fine. It's all clear. But, you know, he goes, I know I was using this power. And the second I got really clear that I was using that power, how I spoke to the police, how I spoke to the DA, how I spoke, that changed. And it wasn't that my words changed, my story didn't change, but my attitude had changed. And I'm like, that's the truth. We're using this power. We need to stop using it unconsciously and have things that we don't want to have happen, or when things we don't want to have happen do happen, instead of freaking out, that we take on that power and use it to move ourselves through that situation. So in looking at all that, you know, I get it that I don't always use it to set myself free. I use it to react. I use it to show everybody that I'm right. And what I know is when I use it like that, it does not serve me or anyone else. So it's time to do it differently. And I think what Reverend Marlene means by first it will make you miserable is that we are responsible for our reactions. And therefore we are responsible for the outcome. And so when we're reacting and not consciously using our power, we can feel really miserable. Did anybody grow up with heaven and hell in their background? Well, sometimes I just think that would be easier. You know, the devil made me do it. That's, you know, something. But what I know in the science of mind, that heaven and hell, we had them, but they're states of consciousness. And you are always in control of your state of consciousness. So what state are we living in today? Or, you know, just ask yourself, you don't have to answer, but what is your state of consciousness around heaven and hell? Are you in heaven or are you in hell? right now today. Because, and well, I'm going to go on. There's a definition for freedom, and that I got out of the dictionary, and it said our ability, freedom is our ability to change or act without constraint. So I had to look up constraint. So just to make sure I was right. So we are experiencing freedom when we realize that truth, that we can operate without constraint, which means without limitation, without restriction. And what I just really want to know is that I, in my freedom, can stop choosing badly. In my freedom, I can see a greater good and a greater possibility. So I just have a couple other things I want to share. So I think this is a great quote. This is Jean-Paul Sartre, I think, Sarter, French guy, French philosopher. And he said, humankind is condemned to be free because once thrown into the world, he is responsible for everything he does. I don't know that we all like that, but definition of condemned. It means to be sentenced. And so we are sentenced to be free. What? We are sentenced to be free. We are free to choose our response to whatever is in front of us. So what are you choosing? Are we choosing to fret, to pray, to transform, to take action, to not take action, to intensify, to make worse, to make better? All of those are viable choices when we're faced with any situation, any condition. So often our action will be to do just a little, like write a blog, read a book, send a check. Those are things I do. And what I know is that there's nothing wrong with doing any of that if what they're doing is preparing me for my next action, my next step. So in our teaching right now, we even have a sign on the wall. Our vision is to create a world that works for everyone. I know you can't see it right now, but it's right there. And the thing I love about that is it's going to take more for me to create a world that works for everyone. It's going to take more than just my little gestures. But what I do know, as we all do what we can to the best we can, that there's an accumulative power that is moving us all forward and enables us to do better and better. Because personally, I want that vision to be the truth. So I will use my freedom to stand for that vision every day. And I'll be honest, not all day, because sometimes I'm cranky or forgetful, can't see the greater truth. But every day I will remind myself, and mainly in those circumstances when I'm not remembering, that with God, all things are possible. And so it is possible for me to continue to contribute to a world that works for everyone. So I personally am using this as a measuring stick. And so when I'm doing one of those things, reading that book, sending that check, I don't write a blog, but I journal. When I do that, I actually hold that up to, is this helping me create a world that works for everyone? And the answer is yes, because of how I'm doing it, the tone I'm doing it in. But then I can also, when I go to the store, and decide to bag my own groceries, is this moving me to a world that will work for everyone? The answer is yes. So it could be big things, little things, anything, but it becomes your measuring stick. And I think it's a good one. So one other name that you might recall, Viktor Frankl, and he was has a huge, wonderful story. Read up on him if you don't know, but he was in a Nazi concentration camp for most of World War II, but kept a very clear idea of who he was. Here's something he said. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. So let's recognize and use our freedom wisely. So here's a contemplation that you could use today, sometime this week, whenever, but it's what I've been using for the last day or so. Contemplate this. Freedom is our nature. Now that we know that, our very nature can set us free. So will you look at your life and remember that? What are you willing to do to keep that truth and that freedom in front of you? Take a deep breath. And I'm going to give this treatment in the first person. So know these words for yourself as I say them right now. God is all there is, and by its very nature, it is free in every regard, free to express, create, love. And from this one thing, it created all of us, me. I know right now that I am part of the divine self, and that therefore I am part of the experience of freedom. Right now, I claim my spiritual freedom, releasing myself from limiting thoughts and behaviors. I am God in expression, and I choose to express the freedom that is mine by divine birthright. I cast away limitation, because to know limitation is to not know God fully. I embrace the behaviors that reflect my free divine nature, and I allow these behaviors to shape my days, my nights with satisfaction and perfection. At every turn, I choose freedom, freedom over bondage, embracing the truth about myself. By recognizing my freedom, I unleash more and more goodness into my life, the life of my community, and the world. I am living my God nature ever more fully with each passing day. And I give great thanks for my awareness that freedom is my reality and anything else is not. I am grateful that I choose this reality. I am thankful for the release of these limiting thoughts and destructive behaviors. And with everyone here, I release these words into the law of mind, knowing that that law, that truth, makes my thought into things. And I let it be so, and so it is. So another deep breath. Okay, so say with me now, divine love through me blesses and multiplies this gift. With all my heart and with all my mind, I know I am saying yes to something I value. With all others present here, we dedicate these gifts to the values and vision we share. But anyway, we're still going to get one more really cool thing, which is Calvin Johnson is going to sing us out. So Calvin, take it away. He's getting
Couldn't find my cursor, sorry. I am the love of God. I am the love of God. I am the love God. I am love, I am love, I am the love of God. I am love, I am love, I am the love of God. You are 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 love. You are love. You are the love of God. You are love, you are love, you are the love of God. We are the love of God, we are the love of God, we are the love of God. We are the love of God, we are the love of God, we are the love of God. We are love, we are love, we are the love of God. We are love, we are love, we are the love of God. I am the love of God. I am the love of God. I am the love of God. You are the love of God. You are the love of God. We are the love of God.
Oh, that was really wonderful. Thank you, Calvin. Thank again, all of you for coming and being a part of our service today. I truly appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you all next time. So namaste.